Whether you're on your way to work, slipping into the tub after a long day, or just don't feel like getting off that couch, get comfortable. It's time for the steamy parts. Welcome in, steamy parters. So today's book we are taking our adventure through is An Honorable Seduction by one Brenda Jackson. They say don't judge a book by its cover, but as I was choosing this one, as I do all my steamy parts by walking through the stacks of my local public library, this one really jumped off the page. Because, it's usually a model or two standing in front of a castle. Not the case here. You know there's going to be fire in these pages right when you pull the book out. So let's talk about that fire. The protagonist of our story here is Lieutenant David Holloway, a third-generation Navy SEAL, so all caps SEAL, if you will. One day his commanders call him into the office and tell him he's being sent on a top-secret mission. See, someone's been sending secrets to the Chinese in the hotbed of espionage. Key West, Florida. I know, that's probably what you were guessing. Anyway, it's not just any old spy. The suspect is the Navy SEAL commander's goddaughter, Swan Jameson. So the commanders sent him down, telling him to find out the truth, and hoping this is all just some misunderstanding. Anyway, you don't see the entire conversation, but you got to imagine the godfather didn't also give a directive of sleep with my goddaughter, but this is David Holloway, Navy SEAL. Who knows what's going to happen? So David goes down, nothing but flip-flops, a couple Jimmy Buffett CDs, and a yearning for the truth. First thing he does, goes into Swan's jewelry shop that she owns as a small business proprietor in the area, and right off the bat you can cut the tension with a spatula. 2 10s facing off. So after buying some jewelry for his mom, which really works getting into Swan's heart, he asks her out on a date and takes her to a romantic spot, happy hour, at the loudest beach bar in Key West. I know all you singles out there are getting all hot and bothered now thinking about going out on a first date like that. Swan sure was. And date number 1 went so well that Swan proposed date number 2 is dinner at her place. And what was on the menu? Not a whole lot of food, I'll tell you that. But let's really find out what happened there. This is An Honorable Seduction by Brenda Jackson. And now, for the steamy part. Swan was having difficulty breathing, and the blue eyes staring at her made her getting air to flow through her lungs even more difficult. Never had she felt this energized from a sexual act. And when David got to his feet and leaned in to kiss her, letting her taste herself on his lips, she felt weak in the knees. But he held her around the waist, holding her up as he kissed her more deeply, making her wish the kiss could last forever. She released a low, disappointed groan in her throat when he pulled his mouth away. Don't worry, there's more coming. He swept her off her feet and carried her over to the bed, placed her on it, and joined her there. You still have clothes on, she said, reaching out to touch his shirt. I know, and they will be coming off. Right now, I just want to lie here, though, with you, hold you in my arms. She smiled at him. You're not going to fall asleep on me, are you? Chuckling, he said. Asleep? With you lying beside me without a stitch of clothes on? Sleep is the last thing I'd be able to do, trust me. He'd already pleasured her with his mouth, so she couldn't help wondering what was next. She soon discovered his intent, though, when he reached over and cupped her breasts. You are perfect, he said, in a deep, husky voice. The words triggered a memory of overhearing her father whisper the same compliment to her mother, after she surprised him with a special dinner after he had returned home from one of his missions. Swan knew she was far from perfect. These were just words David was speaking, but still, hearing them filled her with joy. Maybe she shouldn't let them, but they did. Then any further thoughts dissolved from her mind when David eased a nipple between his lips. She moaned at the pleasure she felt all the way to her toes. Just when she thought she couldn't stand anymore, he began torturing her other nipple. When he finally eased away, she opened her eyes to watch him undress. When he removed his shirt, she saw the tattoos covering his tan skin on both of his upper arms. Huge dolphins emerging from beautiful blue ocean waters. Another tattoo of even more dolphins was painted across his back in beautiful, vivid colors. She'd never been into tattoos, but she thought his were stunning. "I like your tattoos," she said. He glanced over at her and smiled. "Thanks." When he lowered his shorts, her gaze moved to the area between a pair of masculine thighs. His shaft was massive and marvelously formed. Just the thought of him easing that part of himself inside of her sent her pulse skyrocketing. "You okay?" She lifted her gaze to his. She wasn't sure if she was okay. A thickness had settled in her throat when she saw he was looking at her. Not only did he intend to join his body with hers, she had a feeling he planned to keep them connected for a while. "Yes, I'm okay." Swan continued to check him out, thinking he had a mighty fine physique. His body was all muscle, and it was obvious that he worked out regularly. A man didn't get those kind of abs if he didn't. She watched as he pulled a condom from his wallet and sheathed himself in a way that was so erotic. She felt herself getting wetter between the legs just watching him. Then he was strolling back toward the bed, to her. "I'm about to make sure you feel more than okay," he said, reaching down and easing her up to rest her chest against his. Her breasts were still sensitive from his mouth, and rubbing them against his chest caused a multitude of arousing sensations to swamp her. "What are you doing to me?" she asked, in ragged breath, barely able to get the words out. "Anything you can imagine," he whispered, lowering her back on the mattress and then straddling her. He stared down at her as he gently moved her legs apart. She felt him, that part of him, lightly touch her feminine folds, and then he was rubbing back and forth across them, sending even more sensations racing through her bloodstream. "Trying to torture me, David?" "No. Trying to pleasure you. Ready for me?" The movement of his manhood against her was making it impossible for her to concentrate. "What do you think?" "You're so wet and hot, so I think you're ready." And then he entered her in one deep thrust. She gasped at the fullness and was glad he'd gone still for a minute. This gave her the chance to feel him fully embedded deep within her. It had been a long time for her, and her inner muscles were greedily clamping onto him, tightening their hold. "You're big," she whispered. "You're tight," was his response. "But we're making this work." And he did. First, he began moving again, gently sliding in and out of her. That only lasted a few seconds before he picked up the pace and began thrusting harder. She responded by wrapping her legs around his waist. Then he lifted her hips to receive more of him. When he established a slow and deep rhythm, touching areas in her body that hadn't been touched in a long time, or ever, she fought back a scream. She grabbed hold of his hair and pulled it, but he didn't seem to mind. "Rule number 1, Swan. Don't hold back." Was he kidding? It wasn't a matter of holding back. It was more like she was trying to keep her sanity. David was so powerfully male, that he was pushing her over the edge with every deep stroke. Every cell within her vibrated in response to his precise thrusts. Hold on, baby. Things are about to get wild. Flipper had given Swan fair warning. When he began pounding harder, making strokes he never attempted with another woman, going deep, pulling out, and then going deep again, he felt a quivering sensation start at the base of his testicles and move toward her womb with each and every thrust. He had to hold on tight to her to keep them on the bed. He was determined to show her wild. Simultaneously, he leaned down to have his way with her mouth, licking it corner to corner and then inserting his tongue inside, with the same rhythm he was using below. What he was feeling right now was more than off the charts. It was out of the atmosphere. When she finally let go and screamed his name, the sound vibrated in every part of his body, especially in her inner muscles. They clamped down on him, trying to pull everything out of him, while her hands tightened even more in his hair. "David!" She screamed his name again. The sound drove him. He wanted more of her, wanted to go deeper. Throwing his head back, he felt the veins in his neck strain. There was pain, but not enough to dim the pleasure. And he knew at that moment Swan had gotten under his skin in a way no other woman had. He began rocking hard into her with an intensity that made him go deeper with every thrust. Then, he was the one hollering out in pleasure. Saying her name as an explosion ripped through him. Then, like a crazed sexual maniac, he leaned in to feast on her mouth and breasts. It was like his desire for her could not end. David! He knew she was coming again, and damn it to hell, so was he. Marveling at such a thing, he tightened his hold on her. His control had not only gotten shot to hell and back, but had died an explosive death as a result of the most powerful orgasms he'd ever endured. This was what real lovemaking was about. No holds barred, no restrictions. Every part of him felt alive, drained, renewed. The room had the scent of sex, and more sex. But that wasn't all. Emotions he'd never felt before touched him and swelled his heart. He quickly forced those emotions back, refusing to go there, knowing he couldn't go there. Ooh, well, steamers, that one sure did it for me. I assume there's a third day with David and Swan, but you'll have to find out for yourself. If you want to hear other steamy stories, send us an email at steamyparts@gmail.com or tweet at us at steamyparts. We're open to anything. Thanks for tuning in and talk to you next time.